Cool. Timing is great. And in terms of what's happening in Florida right now, and anybody who's not like really considering the business opportunity there is kind of like head in the sand because it's going to be huge. We saw a massive uptake in battery demand in Texas after the big freeze, and I would estimate that the market demand for storage in Florida is just going to skyrocket. Just to mention a few things on the timing. One of the reasons I went from selling in the home to working for Enphase is because I wanted family time. I wanted quality of life. I have 2 little girls, and the first training Anthony asked me to do was 6 p.m., which is like right in the middle of family dinner time. So, but I valued Anthony enough like to do that first training. He's like, hey, can we do some more training? And my wife would just kill me if I started taking on trainings at 6 o'clock, here or there. So I said, look, I'm super happy to do trainings, but this is why I work in Enphase, for my beautiful 4-year-old little girl and 2-year-old little girl. And I appreciate you guys being flexible in the time so that I can make sure to give that time to my family. So that being said, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to dive into the training on storage sizing. I'm going to make this training very dynamic. So it's not going to be kind of like a one-way conversation. It's going to kind of be like downloading a whole bunch of really great information, stopping, asking questions and interacting, making sure you guys can fully wrap your head around the system, because you guys know that I understand storage really well and understand our systems really well, but that's not the point of this training. The point of this training is for you to really feel confident and have that confidence be based on a foundation of knowledge and understanding so that you can give your homeowners the best solutions to solve their problems and to support their goals. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. I am going to do a couple of plugs for additional training. This training came right out of session 5 of the training series I'm providing on Tuesday mornings at 11 o'clock for Enphase office hours. So I have a training program that I've been rolling out. I think now we just did EV chargers this week. Next week, I'm doing sales best practices. I'm posting these trainings on the Enphase Powur Facebook group that I created. So I'll go ahead and put this in the chat too. I've never had to do this for any other installer, but I've never had an installer before that had hundreds and even thousands of salespeople. So what's happening with this Facebook group, which is obviously super fulfilling, is, there's engagement. Somebody's asking a question and somebody who's already been on a training is answering it. I'm posting videos. I think we got about 450 people in that group. I've made it only for Powur and Enphase, like Powur consultants. That's what it's for. Anyways, I encourage you to join that group if you're not already on there. And if you do have any questions for me, just post them on that page. I will post little Loom videos of me giving support for any question you have. If it's a design question, I'll try to answer that. If it's a technical question, I'll try to get into that. Okay, good. So that's like an overview. And, I will mention we have this system planner, but I'm not going to take a lot of time on the system planner. I think that the planner is a nice tool, but ultimately the math for figuring out what kind of battery is the right size for your customer is pretty simple, but few people know it, right? So I'm going to go through the math. And if math is intimidating for you, well, remember, this is only arithmetic, multiplication, and division. There's no calculus. There's no algebra. This is super simple math that I'm going to go over, and it will equip you to have a very, very effective conversation with your homeowner. And before we go through the math, I want to talk about something really, really important, which are the 3 fundamental components. I'm not even doing the slideshow as it is. I'm just showing you the slides. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but I want to walk through the 3 most important concepts to understand when you're talking about battery sizing. Okay. These concepts are kind of like talking about a car having a horsepower and having a miles per gallon, right? If you don't know the difference between a 500 horsepower car and a 200 horsepower car, you're not going to be very effective at selling vehicles. Although these days it's more about kilowatts with your car, but you get the analogy, right? If you can't understand miles per gallon, and how that relates to standard kind of a fuel efficiency, you're probably not, going to be a top car salesman. So you got to know these basics. And when it comes to battery backup, you have three major things you have to understand. The first is energy. The second is power. And the third is surge. So this isn't a one-way conversation. Who's brave enough to give us an explanation of what energy is as it relates to a battery? Anybody willing to give it a shot? There's no wrong answers. Courage is speaking up when you are worried about what people will think and you say it anyways. Anybody want to give a shot? What is energy as it relates to a battery?
Would it be capacity?
Yeah, it's capacity. Can you say anything more about that, Dana? What does that mean to a homeowner? What is that? Are there any analogies you could provide?
Gosh. So depending on the size of the battery, it relates to how much power or energy that device can hold, and then how much it can also discharge.
Okay, great. So perfect explanation. I would say the one little correction I'd say is you said how much power or energy, right? And that's kind of confusing two terms, right? So
yeah.
Not power, just energy. And there's a big difference, okay? So energy is capacity. It's how much energy the battery can hold. There's two analogies I'll give. The first is imagine it like a fuel tank, right? It's like how many gallons of gas your car holds. Capacity is how many kilowatt hours the battery holds. Notice I said kilowatt hours, not kilowatts. So the other analogy I use is it's kind of like a lake of water. The size of that lake is how much water it can hold. The energy capacity of that battery is how many kilowatt hours can be held inside of that battery. And this is when we talk about a 10 kWh battery or 20 kWh battery or 3 kWh battery or 40 kWh battery. That's relating to how many kilowatt hours that battery holds. Is this translating to everybody? Everybody getting this? If you don't get this, you got to be like, wait, I don't understand.
Makes sense.
Cool. So what this mostly relates to the homeowner is how long their battery will support their home during an outage. Right? If I use that lake analogy, imagine you're using the water from the lake to water your crops. Right? You're growing crops in the field. You need water in the lake. You're draining that lake. How long can you drain that lake for? Do you have an hour's worth of water? Do you have 5 days worth of water? So when you think about kind of how long you can keep the house on, that's energy. Okay, cool. So that's concept number one. Who wants to take a guess or take a sense or give a explanation of what power is when it relates to a battery? Dana, you had a pretty good explanation for energy. You want to give power a shot?
Yeah, I would say power is voltage, or how much the device can how much the device can I don't know. I'm not sure how to explain it.
Okay, yeah. So hopefully after I'm done, my goal would be not just that you understand it, is that actually you can explain it by the time we're done. So maybe I'll even ask you to repeat it back to me in your own words.
Okay.
So power is the instantaneous ability to output power, kilowatts. It's instantaneous. So the best analogy, I'd say is that if the capacity is the size of the lake, power is the size of the pipe. Right? If you have a system with very little power, you can only get a little bit of water out of that pipe. If the power is larger, you can get more water out faster. So what that means to an end user is the higher the power, the more loads you can operate simultaneously, and the larger loads you can operate.
Say that one more time, please.
Yeah, the larger the power, the higher the power, the more loads, the more you can run concurrently at the same time, and the larger loads you can run. Right? If I think about running an air conditioning and my pipe is tiny, tiny, I'm not going to be able to get enough water out to provide support for that air conditioning. Power, so energy relates to how big our battery is, primarily, like the actual cells in the battery, how many batteries we have. The power actually relates to how many inverters we have.
Mhm.
And when I say inverters, I actually mean how many inverters for Enphase or how large the inverter is, because the power has to be converted through the inverter. The DC power in the batteries needs to be converted and provided to the house. If you have only a few microinverters in one battery, right, you're not going to be able to get that much power to the house. Okay, cool. So I think we're getting a good overview. I think after I go through all three of the, yeah, go for it, Anthony.
Real quick, so you said instantaneous ability to output power, and you said kilowatt, not kilowatt hours. I just wanted
Correct.
to confirm. Okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to confirm.
Now, the technical electrical way to calculate power is volts times amps.
Okay.
Volts, if you try to do the analogy, is the pressure of how much water is coming in the pipe, and amps is actually the size of the pipe. But because volt stays constant, I just use the size of the pipe as the best analogy. It makes sense. You don't really have to go any more technical than that.
Right.
So, we're thinking about, okay, I got a lake of water, larger the lake, the more water I have in the lake. That makes sense. I need water to keep the house on, but I got to have a big enough pipe to support my goals, which is running a certain number of loads or large loads. Okay, good. So that's the second term. Now, surge is, does anyone want to take a guess at that, or I should just define it?
Just define it, please.
Okay, great. So surge, you're like, please don't call on me. So surge, there's some appliances, mostly you're going to think about it as like an air conditioning is the primary one, especially in Florida. People are running air conditioning all the time. This is cool. I'll actually show you this real quick. I got his site up, and look at this little notification. Hurricane warning alert is issued by your local National Weather Service. Your battery profile will be set to full backup mode. After your alert, the battery returned to its previous settings. Just want to point that out because I had this open. We can come back to that in a minute. Okay, so surge, when a appliance turns on initially that has a motor in it, like an air conditioner or well pump or refrigerator. Refrigerator is not a big one, but you have to take something and turn it on and spin it up, right? It's a motor, right? And the motor is standing still. To take a motor and go from 0 to spinning really fast takes the most amount of energy, right? Once it's already spinning, keeping it spinning is kind of like keeping a car in cruise control, right? If I'm on the freeway at 60 miles an hour, my RPMs are pretty low because my motor's not working that hard. My RPM is probably under 1,000 RPMs. But I'm going from 0 to 60, my RPMs are 4,000, 5,000, because I need a lot more power, right, from my engine to get that car up to speed. Same thing works on this. The air conditioning works the same way. When you first turn on the air conditioning, they draw a lot of power. They pull a lot of amps right out of the gate. Okay, so now who can give it a shot in terms of defining those? Energy, power, and surge. Anybody? It'll be more effective if you, this is a great training opportunity. If you
Are you asking just for the surge portion of it, or
all three?
All three.
Hang on,
So
Ramsey's ready to go. He unmuted himself.
Okay.
Could
Go
you
ahead,
repeat the
Ramsey.
question?
Can you define energy? What is energy, power, and surge as it relates to batteries?
Energy is the flow of electricity that's coming through the pipeline. Surge is the initial spark that you need, the kind of like ATP with the muscles. And then surge, or what was the other one?
So energy, power, and surge.
And power is over time. That's probably not
So
right.
your great definitions, except you switched power and energy. Energy
Okay.
is over time.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, energy is over time. And it's just like with your solar system. If you have a 7 kW solar system, that's the power. And if you look at their energy offset, that's the kilowatt hours. That's over time. Right? So your solar system might be 7 kW, but when it's on for 5 hours in a day, right? A full power, 7 times 5 is 35. That system will produce 35 kilowatt hours in a day.
And that would be the energy.
And that would be the energy. Multiply that by 365, you get about 1,000 kilowatt hours. I'm sorry, you get about 10,000 kilowatt hours a year. And that's, that's about what a 5 kW system will produce, 5-6 kW.
So Spencer, can you give a quick definition again of surge? So
Yeah. So
like,
I'll explain one more time. Ready? Energy is the amount of water in the lake. Power is the size of the pipe that allows us to drain the lake. And surge is the initial draw of larger loads that we need to support, like an air conditioner. Energy is typically related to how long a system can run, how much time the batteries can support a house. Power is how many loads can we run simultaneously, or what large loads can we run. And surge is the extra power needed from the battery system to turn on large appliances like air conditionings. And this definition, I would, like, if I was in your shoes, I would practice this 10 times to myself so that you can explain this to a homeowner. It might be too in-depth. Not all homeowners will go there, but you should be able to explain it to them if they ask, and a lot of them will ask. And if you can't, I'm very clear that I could explain it to a homeowner and they'd get it. And it would make them a more knowledgeable consumer and make them more accountable for what they're buying from me, which I want. I want them to own what they buy, especially when they're buying storage. Because in the middle of a blackout, if they don't own the choice they made and they don't have an experience that they want, they're going to be pissed.
yeah. Yeah. One more time, buddy. You said, so energy is the size of the lake. Power is the size of
The pipe that can drain the lake. And surge is that pipe needs to get bigger for a few seconds when you turn on a large appliance like an air conditioner. Cool?
Yeah, and you can think of power like a power pose where you do it one time, or you're just, you can't go any bigger or smaller. It's your load, your total, the amount that you can produce.
Energy is over time. Power is instantaneous.
Got it. Awesome.
Energy is measured in kilowatt hours. Power is measured in kilowatts or watts. Right? Kilo is just 1,000 watts or 1,000. Cool. Surge is also measured in kilowatts because it's an instantaneous requirement. Okay, cool. So this is fundamental. We just spent about 10, 15 minutes on this, but this is like, foundational. You know this stuff inside and out, and you're going to be better than 95% of the battery salespeople out there. Hands down. Hands down. I almost guarantee that you go head to head with somebody else selling a battery and you know this stuff inside and out, and you will be better than 95% of the people that you'll be selling up against. Because you'll explain it to the homeowner, kind of a little bit, right? You'll give them some, and they'll ask the other guy, and the other guy won't have any idea what they're talking about. And they're going to go, well, why would I trust him to design my system? Why would I buy from him when Anthony, actually knows what he's doing? Well, he's smart enough to schedule trainings, right? To learn more, continue learning. I was actually in the training on electrification today. And I'm a smarty pants. I mean, I've been in energy 18 years. I typically don't have a lot that I typically learn in trainings that are about energy. But you know what? The way this guy communicated this stuff, I was like really glad I went on. I was like, man, it's so valuable to keep learning. His perspective, the way he explained it, the way he talked about electrification, totally different spin on the way I typically do it. I was really glad I went to additional training. And that's after 18 years. So, training sharpens your sword. We never have time for it. We just get too busy. And then anyways, I'm going to get off my soapbox about that. Okay, cool. So we got our three main definitions. Now, let's talk about what that means as it relates to your system. So what we want to do is we want to make sure the system has enough energy, enough power, and has enough surge to support the homeowner's goals. Now, when I say support the homeowner's goals, I'm not talking about time of use or load shifting or time of use savings that's a whole nother training. I'm talking about keeping the lights on and what's important to them during a blackout. 90, 70, 80, 90% of people that are buying batteries are buying batteries to keep the lights on for protection from a grid outage. And that's what I'm going to talk about today in terms of sizing. So we're going to size for energy, we're going to size for power, and we're going to size for surge. And you got to go with the highest common denominator, meaning if a 10 kWh would solve their energy problem, but they need 20 kWh to solve their power problem, you got to go with 20 kWh. Because it doesn't do much good if you give them a 10 kWh battery and they need the power of a 20 kWh, right? Now you can explain it to them, you can teach them, but you got to go with the highest common denominator. What's going to solve energy, power, and surge? Okay, so let's start with energy. Here's my back of the envelope calculations for energy. I'm going to explain it once, I'll explain it twice, I'll explain it 3 times. So if you don't get it the first time, just try to stick with it, okay? This is like rewiring your brain so you have a deep understanding of something. Daily kilowatt hours is my first step. I want to figure out on average how much energy they're using in a day. Okay, so I'm going to start with how many kilowatt hours are they on average using in a daytime. Okay, so that's the first step. The way to figure that out is, you take their monthly average usage, you divide it by 30, or take their annual usage and you have divided by 365. Right, that math is pretty simple. You're figuring out, okay, on average, what they're using in a daytime. Now, in a day. So you want to be careful, because if they're in a climate like San Diego, where people sometimes use a lot more cooling and their bills are a lot higher in July than it is in January, you don't necessarily want to use their annual average if they want to support their air conditioning in July. You want to use the daily average for the months in which they typically are going to want to use the storage and what they're going to want to support. So if they've got electric heat and electric cooling and it's pretty consistent throughout the year in terms of their monthly, then sure, use the annual average. But if they're like this in the summertime and like this in the wintertime, you got to ask them, hey, do you want to back up your air conditioning? Do you want to operate like you're running in the summertime? And if they say yes, then you say, okay, I got a size for that. Give me July, August, and September. Let me average those 3 months, find out your daily average usage then. Now this math is fast. You already know their consumption. It's 18,000 a year, right? I'm dividing by 365. Boom. I'm not going to use a calculator right now, but I don't know, 50 or 60 kilowatt hours or something a day on average. Okay, it's those months. I'm picking July, August, September. Average monthly usage was 1,500 each of those months, right? I'm 1,500 times 3 divided by 90 days, daily average usage. Multiplication, division. I think we learned that in 5th grade. Everybody on this phone is capable of doing that. If you're not, I don't know. There's a lot of jobs that pay a lot less that I would recommend for you. If you haven't done it in a while, fine, practice. Daily kWh usage. Okay, cool. So daily kWh, you guys like me because I'm genuine, but I'm direct. Okay, daily kWh. So we got daily kWh usage. Okay, cool. Okay, I got it. They're using this much in a day. By the way, do they have a pipe this big in a day, or do they need this much water in the lake? Energy. Do they need a pipe this big? Or are we talking about how much water in the lake?
They need the lake.
Water
Yeah,
in
the
the
lake.
lake.
Yeah.
Cool. So we know they're using about this much water every day, and that's what we want to support. Now, to figure out if they're using that much in a day, how much do we need to have in the battery? Initially, you may say, oh, we just need that much in the battery. But good thing we have the solar energy coming from the sun. It's kind of like, think about, you have the lake and you have the field of crops. Imagine the solar energy is kind of like it's raining. If it's raining, you don't need to draw from the lake because the water is being directly watered from the crops. Some of that water is going to go to the crops. Some is going to go into the lake to fill it up. So the back of the envelope math that I do is I just multiply that daily kWh times, multiply it by the percentage of a day that the sun is not shining. Say that again. I multiply that daily need by the percentage of time of a day when the sun is not shining. So what is that? Well, you could say it's half, you could say it's 3/4, you could say it's 2/3. Depends on where they are, it depends on how they're using energy, but this is back of the envelope math. You could use some sophisticated tool, but I find consulting over and over and over and over and having the conversation, listening, being really present with them and kind of understanding their needs are going to help you become better than any tool could be. And fast. This isn't something that takes me hours to come up with. This is like 60 seconds because I've done it hundreds of times, if not thousands. So what determines on whether it's half or 3/4 or 2/3? Well, really, I say the time of day the sun is shining. What really is the most meaningful is the time, how many hours a day they're using energy when they're not getting it from solar. So, okay, let me try to break this down a little bit. If they're using a ton of energy, right, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., if they're using half their energy during that time and the other half happens at nighttime, then I will use half. Because I know that they're using energy. Let me open up his app right here. That they're using energy here. Let me go back to an even nicer day because he's had some cloudy days. I know their energy is happening here. Usage is happening here, the majority. Now, if you look at Richard's system, he's a pretty consistent energy user. You know, from 7 a.m., you know, he's using 6.2 kilowatts all the way to about, you know, midnight. He's got his air conditioning on almost all day. Middle of the night, he probably turns it off. 2.4. He's probably not using a lot of air conditioning at 2 a.m. Probably a little bit if it's Florida for humidity, but not the same as he's using at 3 p.m. So when I look at his usage, I go, okay, what percentage of his usage happens while the sun is shining? I would say maybe somewhere between 1/4 and 1/3 is happening when the sun is shining. So I would multiply the battery by 3/4 or 2/3. Don't worry if you don't get it yet. We're going to review this like 4 times so it sticks. Okay, let's look at another day, see if I can get a better day for him or even a better profile. You're using a lot of energy there. A lot of energy. I know it's the summertime, September. I'm going to try to go back to a day where he didn't use the air conditioning. And no, it's only been installed for a month. So if we look at this system right here, imagine this left side looked like that on the right side over here. So imagine the usage went down at 4 or 5 p.m. Imagine he wasn't running air conditioning at night. In this case, I would say, wow, you know, the majority of his usage is happening in the middle of the daytime. I only need to cover maybe 50% of the usage with a battery because not that much is happening at nighttime. In this case, I look and I go, wow, a lot of the usage is happening when the solar is not shining. I need to have a larger percentage of battery backup here. So in that case,
are you
go
looking at, can you go back to that? Go back to his usage, please.
yes.
Are you referring to the orange? That's what he's producing, or that's his consumption?
Yeah, let me
then-
define that. So orange is usage,
Okay,
blue is solar production, and gray is what's coming from the grid.
okay.
So would you recommend a bigger battery then?
It's hard to tell based on your home.
Because I work from home, my wife works from home.
So right now, look, check this out, right? Right now, the battery is not being used at all. Why? Because you're in full backup mode. The hurricane's coming. We want to make sure you get as much battery as you can. But if I go
Right.
back, let me see if I can, there's just not that many days. Let me see here. I thought there were some
But not
days.
only that, Spencer, it's not on because it only powers the battery when it's not in emergency mode. It only powers the battery with power that he exports to the grid. Correct? Not
I
power
don't want to go too much off subject here. So we're getting a little bit because what happens is when people are learning, it's really important to have one concept really stick. And so I don't want to take this too far off
Perfect.
path. What we're trying to clarify, and I want to get, just try to hold that question or that thought, Dana, till later. What I want to clarify.
Look at the 27th on there
Uh,
for the battery.
Yeah, I don't want to get into this because it's a whole nother thing to analyze for now. What I want you to understand is that when I look at your usage in relationship to your solar output, a lot of that usage is happening when the sun isn't shining.
Right.
Now, if I took another system, let me see, I have this one up, I think. Let's look at it. Here's a good one, right? This one is great. I was just looking at this one. Oh, no, this is yours. What was the other one I was just looking at? I just want to show you one other kind of profile that you might see more often in, say, California. This is a different site ID. It is 3169364. And I'm going to open their system up. And we're going to open their app up for a second. And we're looking at energy. Now, you're not going to have the benefit of looking at this ahead of time, but look at this system or this home. Is most of their usage happening when the sun is shining, or is most of the usage happening when the sun isn't shining?
When the sun is shining.
Yeah, a good portion of their usage, especially on a day like this, right, is happening when the sun is shining. They're using a little bit during these hours. They're using a medium amount here, but look at that air conditioning use. Boom, 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 boom. A lot of that's happening, when they have solar power. So the question I would ask them to kind of help me determine what percentage I want to use is I'd say, how much of your energy use happens during the daytime? And they may say, oh, most of it. We work from home and we don't use air conditioning at night. Or they may say, no, we run air conditioning all day long. If they say run air conditioning all day long, you want to have a closer battery backup size to their daily kWh usage. I would want to have, in this case, probably a 30 kWh battery. If they said, no, a lot of my energy happens during the daytime,
Yep.
I would say, okay, maybe I only need a 20 kWh battery because I don't need to store that much energy to use at nighttime because I know I can water the crops while the sun's shining. So I go, okay, daily kWh, what do they need? What percentage of their daily usage happens in the daytime or at nighttime? If this is too hard for you to understand, just choose 2/3. Just take this number, their daily kWh usage, and multiply it by 2/3. And what you're going to get, I should probably add that one here to it as an option. 42 kilowatt hours times 2/3. Equals, what is that? 42 times 0.66666 is 28 kilowatt hours. So at this point, I'm saying, okay, if half of their usage happens, if only half of their usage happens at night, I'm just going to cover half of their daily needs with a battery. If 2/3, I'm going to cover 2/3 of their daily needs with a battery. And that would be 28. And I'm just going to round up and give them 30 kWh. Now this says 400%. What do I mean by 100%? Well, we'll get there in a second. This means this is basically whole home backup. This is whole home. Why? It's typically what they use. This is the days that they're typically using energy, and you're providing, 100% of that usage for nighttime. Is everybody following this?
So Spencer, you're saying that then that battery is what's making up the difference for that usage they're using at night,
Yeah.
is basically what it is. So to do 100% during the day, they're running solar 100%, and then the backup battery runs the rest of it, which offsets it, and that makes it 100%, correct?
Yes.
If I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes.
Okay, that
Spencer,
makes
could you
sense.
remove the
Makes sense
cursor,
to me.
please?
Go, Ramsey.
Sorry about that. Could you remove the cursor? I'm trying to get that last part down with you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure. So I'll repeat it again. What I'm saying is, okay, you already sized their solar system for 100% offset. One of the questions that often comes up is like, well, if I'm filling up the battery, how is there also going to be enough energy for the house? It's a real common question. And so what you want to think about is that 24 hours of production, let me say it differently. 24 hours of what you would need for energy usage is happening in the daytime. So in the 5 or 6, 7 hour period of the sun shining, that system on typical days is going to produce what you need for all 24 hours. So if you add that up, it's going to cover whatever is used during the daytime, and anything extra that goes to charge the batteries is just going to be used later in the day. So we know in that 5, 6 hour period, everything's covered for what they're going to use at night. Now, if your battery is not big enough, right? If it's too small of a battery, that extra production that happens during the daytime that doesn't get used is going to disappear. You won't have enough energy at night because there's no way for it to go. The house uses what it uses. Everything else has to either go into a battery or it goes away. Well, how does it go away? Well, if you're off grid, I'm all talking about backup now. The solar will actually ramp down because there's no way for it to go. It's not that it only produce what's needed. It'll produce maximum it can to support the loads of the house and to charge the battery. But if the battery is full because you don't have enough batteries, or the house isn't using enough energy, then the solar will ramp down.
Spencer, I know you already said this, and I hate to make you repeat
No,
yourself, but
please repeat, because
in
every question. Yep.
okay. So in your equation over here, 42 kilowatt hours multiplied by, let's take the first one half,
Yep.
right? You're in parentheses, percentage of the time with no sun. Is that referring to the half? Let me
redefine this. Percentage of usage that happens when solar energy is not available. It's actually a better way to say this.
Okay. All right. So in that scenario, you're saying that it would be what, half of 42, which is, I mean, what is that, 21?
Yeah.
Okay. So in that case, they would need 2 batteries.
2 in-charge tins.
Yep.
Okay.
So Spencer, I guess my question then will be, yeah, that's what you're talking about here is offsetting for the time that's not being used. Like myself, I've got a small battery. How does that come into effect?
Yeah. Well, you undersized your battery for your
My usage,
for your typical usage. So, and some people will. Some people will say, look, I don't want to pay for 30 kWh. Now, I'm going to challenge that conversation a little bit, because 2-3 years ago, I would probably say, yeah, I understand. These days, especially in Florida and Texas and California, I mean, Richard, what did your neighbor just say? Or the guy you were just talking to?
He wants to have a system where he doesn't lose power and goes out power. He wants to have something that backs it up. And now this gives me, now I understand how to size them.
Yeah. Well, you're not fully yet. So
Right.
we got a little more to go through, but the conversation that I like to have with a homeowner when they want it, but they're concerned about the cost, is home values.
Yep.
How much is, our homes are $1 million, maybe 700,000, maybe 1.4, depending on where you are. Right. I don't know what the average home price is in your area, but it's a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so, let's say $1 million home, $30,000 is 3% of the value of the home.
Yeah.
So do you want to spend 3% of the value of the home so that that home is protected from a blackout or any kind of natural disaster, so that your home has energy independence? Not everybody's going to say yes, but man, if you're in an area with a hurricane and the power just went out, what I think you'll find is that we get in our own way there. We talk customers out of and think and assume that they don't want to spend the money. And I know a lot of salespeople that don't make that assumption and sell, excuse my French, a shitload of batteries and a shitload of large systems, and have very, very happy customers, because when the grid goes out, they feel like Superman. The owner of a company that sells, who is my customer, who sells the most batteries in the state of California, and they actually installed more batteries than Tesla installed for Tesla. He was telling a story about how his wife, how they had a blackout and they lost power. And his wife was like, don't you own a battery company? And he ended up putting like 3 batteries in his house, and there was a blackout, and power stayed on because he had his battery system installed at that point. And he basically said, makes me feel like a man. Makes me feel like a man. Right. And I don't mean to be like masculine about it. It could be a woman who says, makes me feel like I'm protecting my family too. But it's just, it's speaking to, when you got $1 million home or a $2 million home, that protection, that security, it's different. It's a different sales conversation than just I'm to save you money. Okay.
Can I add something real quick, Spencer?
Yeah, go for it.
Another thing is, let's look at the hurricane scenario, assuming we're not underwater. It's not going to be shining maybe for 1 or 2 days or 3. So that's where the extra batteries would come in also, because you're draining the lake with no replenishment the next day if the sun's not out. So you'd want the extra battery because of that.
Yeah, if you have overcast, it's you're not going to get a full fill up. So having more battery power, more energy in the battery and more power that you can provide to the loads.
That would be huge on day 2 or 3.
Okay, so the second part of this equation, this is the first part, right? So if I had to kind of bracket this, I would say this is part 1. The second part is, what percentage of coverage do you actually want? So if we use this example for a second, okay, let me put this one back up there, but let me just make these like gray for a second. More gray. We use this example for a second and we say, okay, in this scenario is 21 daily kWh. Some customers might say, hey, I don't really want to do full backup. I just want to keep the lights on and the internet modem on and, and the fridge on. And I'm okay without air conditioning during a blackout. And then you say, okay, well, would you feel comfortable with using about half the energy you typically use? And you can take that 21 and divide it by 2. But this is setting expectations. This is if somebody chooses a 10 kWh battery, you're telling them you're getting about 50% of what you typically would use. Yeah, Dana, do you have your hands up?
Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to make a transition here in my thought process.
Good.
Because the consensus from the consumer and even with a lot of consultants is that batteries are used primarily for emergency situations only. But it sounds like, but the information that you're providing is that not only are you considering an emergency situation, but you're also considering demand charges in the evening time, right? And so how do you differentiate that conversation with your customer that, to avoid those demand charges in the evening time and not have that bill from, whatever utility company they are, the importance of the battery in that scenario versus using it for an emergency situation?
It's almost a separate training altogether.
Okay.
Okay. Most of the training, 98% of what I've been talking about today is sizing batteries for backup power. I talked about that earlier, right? Most people
backup in emergency or backup for demand?
Backup for emergency. The grid goes down, you have power. That's mostly what I'm talking about today. Now, demand charges like they have in Arizona, places where they don't have a net metering structure, places where they have time of use differences, and the savings associated that you can get with a battery, definitely part of the conversation, but not, based on my experience, not currently the primary driver. In some markets, I guess it could be the primary driver, but if you look across the US overall, and I have access to a pretty good amount of markets partly because Powur is my customer and you guys sell in 20 territories now. Most people are selling batteries because homeowners want energy security. They want to know if the grid goes down, they're going to have the lights on. So Dana, I'm not going to have time to walk through the savings benefits today. I'd be happy to schedule another training where we talk just primarily about savings when it comes to batteries. But this conversation and talk about sizing is going is mostly about backup. Now, that being said, I'll share one thing. If you do 100% backup based on an accurate assessment of the percentage of usage that happens when the solar is not available, if you do 100%, you will automatically take care of all the savings that are possible, meaning you are now sizing them to be almost completely energy independent, meaning they will have enough battery power in the evening time to self-consume the energy they're generating from solar, meaning most of the energy that they would typically use at the nighttime will be able to come from a battery that's big enough to support them because you sized it that way.
And does that go in effect as well on like myself, like today, a cloudy day, days that, could be 2 or 3 days worth of storm?
No.
Well, when we talk about resilience and savings, they're two different scenarios. Savings, any individual day doesn't really matter that much because it's a buying and selling situation where you're getting credits over time and you're really looking at an energy bill over 30 days or a whole year of energy costs. And so 1 or 2 or 3 days doesn't really matter. If you underproduce and you use a little bit more, it's not going to be a big financial impact.
Makes sense.
So a day or two of cloudiness and savings doesn't really make that big of a difference. But in resilience, it can make all the difference because a day or two of cloudiness, when the power's out, that will have a real impact. Okay, cool. So this is energy. Okay, and I know we're going to go a little bit over time, Anthony. I hope that's okay. Can we go about 10, 15 minutes over? Let me just check my calendar to make sure I don't have 4 o'clock.
Take all the time you need, brother.
Okay,
Because I know once you finish, you're going to be flooded with questions.
Oh, great. Okay, well, let's go to power. So we talked about energy. Hopefully, you guys are fully grasping how to size for energy. If you don't, there's not much more I can say that I haven't already said in this training. You might need to watch it 2 or 3 times. Think of it as your education. Some people just need to hear things multiple times to get it to make sense. I promise if you watch this video, if you watch this, go ahead. If you watch it and pause it, do the math, ask some questions, watch it again, it will sink in. If you don't like this one, watch the other one I've been posting.
I do have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you couldn't hear me earlier, so
Only
that's fine.
question
I was,
only be about energy right now.
yes. No,
Great.
I was driving through mountains. You were cutting in and out earlier when I was talking about this, but I used to work for Semper Solaris. I don't know if that's the customer you're talking about in San Diego who sells more than Tesla, but I used to work for them. Anyway, my question is this. What we used to do is we would have the essential load backup, the emergency backup versus someone who wanted to back up all their circuits for their entire home. And so one alternative for energy would be that we would back up only certain circuits. We wouldn't back up all the circuits. We would back up the essential circuits that were necessary if there was an outage. And so one workaround to the option we were talking about could be that you would back up only specific circuits, not all the circuits. Is that correct? We used to sell mostly Tesla Powerwalls, but I think it probably would be the case with Enphase as well, right?
So it's a really good question. And it's a part of this training I don't really talk about too much, but the selection of circuits in some ways will self-select what option they're getting. So selecting which circuits they're going to back up is going to be dependent a big part on these numbers. So for example, if I sized it at 100% backup, I would try to put all the circuits on backup. I would try to do a whole house configuration.
One thing that we often ran into was challenges with something like 40 or 50 amp circuits, something like, for example, an air conditioner.
Yeah, so you're getting ahead of yourself. That's power and surge. We're not talking about that yet.
Got it. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, but what I will say is if you do 50% coverage, right? And you are only sizing their water in the lake, their energy for half of what they typically use. Well, a really good way to manage that would be to only put on, loads that use about half of the energy. So leaving off the air conditioning, leaving off those larger loads makes a lot of sense in that scenario. So I don't mean to say it should happen automatically, but it kind of should happen automatically. If you do 100% backup and you're doing like a 20 kWh or 30 kWh backup, in that scenario that's covering 100%, they're kind of getting a larger system. The guidance is whole home backup there. If it's a humongous house and you're at 50%, right, coverage, right, they should have 60 and you're only giving them 30. You may say, even in that scenario, hey, we're only going to back up one of your air conditioners, not all three. So I would kind of manage the load guidance to Powur a big part based on that percentage. And if you guys don't have this, where is this? The pre-sale checklist. This is the tool that I would recommend using. Hey, they got whole home backup. I'm at 100%. I'm clicking all these. They want everything. I know I got 30 kWh. They are stoked. Let's put all this stuff on here.
That's a standard form for us when we sell batteries through Powur.
Yeah, right. Or, I'm at 50% offset, right? I know to get 100%, I would need to be 40 kWh. I'm only getting 30. Well, I'm going to put some of this fundamental. They said they wanted their well pump. I think that's fine. I'm going to put the air conditioning, the pool pump, electric oven as nice to have, right? So the general guidance based on your question, which is a really good one, I don't know your name, but it was a really good one, is if you're doing partial, to try to simplify it, if you're at 50%, you're in partial home. If you're at 100%, you're in whole home. Based just on energy. Now we're going to talk about Powur and surge now, because as I said, you have to go with the highest common denominator. If you're at 100% on energy and they use so little energy, 100% is a 10 kWh battery, and you don't meet the power requirements to back up an air conditioning, then you can't back it up. So we just walked through energy. Okay, we talked about making sure there's enough water in the lake. And I know this is like a kind of heavy, a lot of information. It gets faster. I promise. I promise it gets faster. This can become almost intuitive for you. Because basically you do that math, you get to the percentage and you say, okay, we're doing partial home backup at 50% coverage. You cool with that, Mr. Homeowner? Yeah, I'm good with that. I want whole home backup, 100% coverage. Here's the number based on the math. So you kind of do that check. Okay, let me look at a couple other things. The next thing I'm gonna look at is Powur. So here's your Powur table. Remember, Powur is the size of the pipe. I gotta make sure my batteries can support the power requirements of running a lot of loads at the same time or large loads. And the way code lays this out is they say the batteries have to support the largest load. I got to be able to, if I'm putting the air conditioning in backup, I at least have to be able to support the air conditioning. Each battery has inverters inside of it. As you add more batteries, you get more inverters. When you get more inverters, you get more power. When you get more power, the pipe gets bigger. Each 10 gives you access to equivalent support of 20 amps circuits. Now you may say, well, what if I have lots of 20 amp circuits? And you only said you have to support one. Well, I'm not going to get into the nuance here too much because this could take another hour. But to just think this through, it's actually 20 amps at 240 volts means two 20 amp circuits because each 20 amp circuit usually is 120. And a 20 amp circuit rarely is pulling 20 amps. They're usually pulling 5 amps or 4. With LEDs these days, they're pulling a lot less. So I'm going with code. And typically, code is going to say that you got to support the largest load. And I've guided a ton of people on this. I've never had anybody I guided on this that followed the guidance that came back to me and says this was way undersized. Never. It just seems to work out pretty well. So what's the story here? Well, if 110 provides 20 amps, 210s provides 40 amps. 310 provides up to 60 amp circuit support. And 410s provides up to 80 amp circuit support. So you just want to scan through the appliances and say, what's the largest breaker I'm trying to back up? If it's a 40 amp air conditioning, the second kind of check is I got to have 2 Encharge 10s if I'm backing up that circuit. So summary is, and I'll show you another table that I'll send over to Anthony to share with you. Is if you're doing any of these configurations, sunlight backup, 3 kWh or 10 kWh, you're only backing up to 20 amp circuits, 15 and 20 amp circuits. You're not backing up 30 and 40 amp circuits. If you're doing a 20 kWh, you're backing up to 40 amp circuits. And if they want to back up a 5-ton air conditioning, right, which has a 50 amp circuit, you want to sell them 3 10 kWh batteries. Don't shortchange them. Now you may say, well, could I get away with it if it was just on the edge? Sure, but I'm telling you, that air conditioning, it could collapse the backup circuit if it's too much. And it'll probably drain down that battery way too fast. Because 20 kWh on a 5-ton air conditioning, that 5-ton air conditioning is probably pulling 5 kW. That's 3 hours where that battery is, 3-4 hours where that battery is gone. Go with the 30 kWh. Now you're getting 5-6 continuous hours after the sun is shining. It's the right size for a system that, for an air conditioning that big. Now I'm talking about energy there, but the code has that battery size set based on the circuit size. Okay, so I'm doing the energy math. I'm saying, okay, am I at whole home backup? Am I at partial home backup? If I'm at whole home backup, I'm basically going to this next chart and saying, okay, I'm at whole home backup. And where am I? Am I at 30 kWh? Right? If I'm at 30 kWh, probably set because most homes don't have circuits bigger than 60 amps. If I'm at whole home backup and only have 2 Encharge 10s, I better make sure they don't have huge air conditioning units. Because in this case, even though I have enough water in the lake, the pipe itself is too small. And when they try to turn on the air conditioning, not enough.
Can I ask another question about that?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Go for it.
So one thing that we used to use when we would sell batteries, we would do an AC soft start, where it would just specifically for the AC, it would turn on instead of it coming on all at once. It would take about 5 to 7 seconds to turn on the air conditioning. That was a workaround so that we were able to do 2 batteries without having to add a third, so that we'd be able to specifically just isolate the air conditioning so that it wouldn't trigger the power shut off for the house, but that you'd be able to get it to set up. So AC, as I said, we also sell Tesla Powerwalls, but I assume with an Enphase, we could do the same thing with an AC, is do an AC soft start, right?
So what's your name?
I'm sorry, my name is Brad.
Brad, awesome. I really appreciate your comments and questions. And I'm going to be very, very direct with you. That comment shows that you understand the model that Semper delivered, but that you don't fully understand the math here. And here's the difference. That comment was about surge. We're talking about continuous power. So yes,
I was talking about surge actually. I knew, yes. That's
yeah,
right.
you were talking about surge, and I'm talking about continuous power right now.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, okay, got
So
it.
we're gonna get there. It's a little ahead of time, and why I kind of am giving you a kick in the butt here is because I want you guys to have a deep understanding, and formulas are really useful, but if you don't know where they come from, you can get in a lot of trouble. So absolutely, we're going to talk about surge in a minute, and having a soft start is included when you install a battery because you do need to reduce the surge. But reducing the surge is not going to support continuous power demand by an air conditioning. What's continuous power demand? It's the size of the pipe. It's the continuous size of the pipe that needs to flow enough water to support that air conditioning, not in the first 10 seconds, but for 3 hours or 4 hours, however long you want to run the air conditioning. And that number right here is in continuous power. And it relates to the circuits right here. Because the circuit size is always sized for continuous power. Circuits actually can surge above continuous power because breakers have a little bit of a buffer. You can actually go higher than what the breaker allows for a few seconds and not trip the breaker. Because anyways, the breakers are there to protect the wires, and a little bit of extra energy going through the wires, I should say power, a little bit of extra power going through the wires for a very short amount of time is not going to overheat the wires. But if you had continuous energy higher than those, continuous power higher than those wires could support, then it would start to heat up the wires, and that's why the breaker's there. So check number 2, we're talking just about power, not about surge yet. Hang on for your comment for 1 second, Brad. So a soft start is great for surge. For continuous, you got to make sure the batteries can support the largest load. And the way you're going to do that, and I'm doing a training not next week, but the week after, actually 2 weeks after that, on designing for large loads. It'll be the week of, let's see, 4/11, so 4/11, 18th. It'll be the 18th of October. So the way to support that is technically, if you want to go beyond the circuit, is you actually look at the RLA label, the running load amps, which is the continuous amount that air conditioning pulls. And you'd make sure this number, the running load amps, is lower than whatever the battery system you configured is providing. I'll talk about that more then. This is the back of the envelope way. Okay, it's on a 40 amp breaker. I'm good with a 20. Okay, it's on a 50 amp breaker. I'm good with a 30. If I have to do it fast, that's what I'm doing.
Got it.
Okay, cool. So that's power. We're taking the largest load. We're looking at the breaker panel. What are we putting on backup? How we verify the power is going to be sufficient for code is we make sure the breaker is equal to or less than the circuits to include for each one of these tables. Each 10 has 20 amps. 2 10s is 40, 3 10s is 60. They add up because you're adding more inverters in our batteries. So I'm saying, oh, I got a 50 amp breaker that's above 40 amps. I can't support it with a 20. I'm putting 3 batteries on there. Okay, I got a 60 amp breaker. I got to put 3 batteries. The highest load in this house is only 30 amps. I'm good with 2 batteries at 20, sorry. Oh, I'm not putting any of the large loads on backup. I'm only doing 50% coverage. I'm only putting the small loads less than 20 amps, and I'm at 50%. Okay, I'm good with an Encharge 10. The homeowner says I have to have my, I don't know, thingamabob, which is on a 30 amp circuit on backup. Okay, we'd love us to make sure that can run during an outage. We got to get you an Encharge 20 so that we know that we have enough power to support that thingamabob. So the other component here, the other cut of this is that IQH during the daytime will go above this. And for Richard, he's not going to be able to run a lot at nighttime. But during the daytime, when the sun's shining, if there's a blackout, he'll have some more flexibility. I'm not going to take too much time on that right now because we're just at time, we're over time. But I want to stop and see if anybody has any questions about Powur before we go on. Can anybody explain how to check Powur when it comes to sizing the storage system? So I know somebody got something out of my last 30-minute rant on Powur.
Well, my first go-to would go to the service panel.
Okay.
Check the circuits.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna verify what?
Verify. You're going to verify what circuit is what amperage.
Yep. What's
the
the largest
one in there?
Go ahead, Doug.
The largest breaker in there is what you're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah. And then that's how you size that's how you size what battery you'll give them.
Yep. Yeah, go for it, Anthony.
So let's say you check that and you feel, maybe the Encharge 10 would suffice, but then you do the math previously based on energy consumption and you feel because summer months, whatever they need at 20, once again, are you going for the 20 because you're going for the larger common? Okay.
You got it. Because if they want 100%, if they need that energy, right, then their battery run out, in half the time than it would need to be.
Yep.
Supported.
So this is essentially the 3 steps.
Yeah. So yes, you have enough energy. Sorry, yes, you have enough power, but if you're only at 50% with a 10, then they drain that battery down and they'd be done. They'd be out of power, out of energy. Okay. And vice versa, you may end up saying, you know what? I only need a 10 for energy, but I need a 20 for power. Right? If they want to support that. Now that's actually, I think that's kind of a cool situation because you say, you know what? I got 200% of what you typically would need at nighttime or 150%. Right? That means if it's a cloudier day or if it was, multiple days of cloudiness, they'd actually have more energy. Now, this is not a decision I would make in a vacuum. This is a conversation I'd have with the homeowner. I do the math for them and say, if we go with an Encharge 20 system, or now we call it an IQ battery 20 system, we're going to get about 100% of what you typically would use in the evening time. And that will cover your air conditioning. And they say, well, I really want to go with a 10. Say, okay, if you go with a 10, you're going to have to use about half the energy you typically would use. And we're only going to be able to back up these circuits, everything that's less than 20 amps. These 4 that I saw outside that are 30 and 40 amp circuits, we're not going to be able to put those on backup per code. And they go, okay, boom. You fill out the table, you have them sign it, ideally even, or at least you send it an email. We're doing 50% backup. These circuits are not a backup. Happy customer. Expectations set properly. Good. Right? Vice versa, you may get into a situation where, they want the whole house and you do 38 kWh and, they're getting their whole house and that's great. And they're getting all the circuits on backup because you check the panel and all of them are under 60 amps. In some cases, you do the math on this first one and you go, wow, 100% coverage at 2/3, I'm at 55 kilowatt hours. The maximum storage system size, 40 kilowatt hours. Oh man, what am I going to do? Right? So what do you do there? Well, you just got to let the homeowner know. Hey, typically in the evening time, you need 55. We went with the largest system available and you got 40. So you're going to have to use about 75% of what you typically would use in the evening during a blackout. Are you comfortable with that? And we can back up. We have 80 amps of backup circuits. You'll probably be able to run 1 or 2 air conditionings at night, probably all 3 air conditionings during the daytime when the IQ8s are shining. You're going to have to be a little bit more conservative than what you typically use. So it's a conversation starter. It's kind of to figure out where they are. And, you know, before I would even make the decision, I just ask them, what's important to you? Are you looking to back up just the most essential loads? You want to back up the whole home? Do you want to back up your air conditioning, or is that not important to you? They say, I really want to back up my air conditioning. Okay, great. Totally. We have an amazing system to do that. I want to just make sure you're clear. That's a very, very powerful storage system. You know, it's going to, you know, that's going to cost a lot more than just doing the essential loads. Is that something you're comfortable with? I probably wouldn't even communicate it that way. That's almost a negative. So I'd probably say, like, you know, it's a huge opportunity to really be resilient and free from the grid. I do want to set your expectation. It's going to be around $30,000 to $40,000 to do that. And then you deal with that much. I didn't know it was going to be that much. And you say, well, you know, I used to not believe that, you know, people would even spend that much, but a lot of people are just seeing what's happening with utility prices and the grid and grid resilience. And, you know, you probably have $1 million home. You'd be surprised how many people are spending 3% of their home value to make an investment to have full independence. Right? At that point, you kind of shifted their perception. That's a really cool way to break existing beliefs of a homeowner. You say, I used to think this, then I discovered this, now I think this. You kind of take them on your journey of the way you change the way you think.
If you would have told me that, Spencer, I would have gone for a bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Seriously.
Richard, you're heading in the right direction though, bro. Seriously, don't be down on yourself about this. 'Cause
No.
you're definitely headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I you know,
and a lot of people didn't get backup systems at all.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's learning and educating, and that's what I'm doing is, you know, I got educated, so that's what I needed, and now I know moving forward, if I want to upgrade, I can upgrade, but
Yeah.
I know now, you know, especially this guy I got to talk to, I know now how to talk to him and how to, you know, educate him better on what he's looking for.
And you can be authentic. You can say, you know what, I went with a 3 kW because I was trying to save money, and, you know, I'm really glad I went with some backup, but now that I think about it in hindsight, I probably would have gone with a bigger system.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and
Richard,
if he wants
if
a
it makes
better, you
you-
get him a 3, right? Just set the expectation that what he's got is a 3. Okay, last one. We're going to talk about surge. Brad brought it up earlier. Okay, so our batteries currently surge 1.5 times the continuous power. Okay, so a 10 will surge to 24, a 20 will surge to 48, a 30 will surge to 72. Surge on an air conditioner is measured in something called LRA, which stands for locked rotor amps. The rotor, the spinner is locked, it's not moving, you got to spin it up. When you add a soft start, it cuts the LRA in half. So to do the back of the envelope math, and I don't really have a great slide for this, but you're going to just have to remember it or rush the recording. You're going to take the LRA off the air conditioning. You're going to divide it by 2, and you're going to check it with the surge power table.
Right.
Most likely, this is going to work perfectly just based on continuous power. Most likely. You're going to find it lines up really, really nicely. But, you know, you promise air conditioning, you want to promise air conditioning. How fast, if I had the data in front of me, by the way, how fast do you think it would take to do that full analysis that I just spent an hour and a half explaining?
Minute.
5 minutes?
I've seen you do it in
30
about a minute.
A minute. I could do it in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Yep.
I could do it in 60. If I had the label in front of me and I had their continuous power, I could do it in 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. Maybe it would take 2. So I don't want you to think of this as like, it's way too much work.
No.
It's getting, and if it takes you 5 minutes, you know, or 8, I mean, I'm good at math. I'm not shy about that, right? If it takes you 5 or 6 or 7, fine. That's not bad, right? That's not a big investment to close a deal where you make $5,000 or $8,000 and you get a satisfied customer.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to stop because we're way over time. But you know, I appreciate the attentiveness and the engagement and really kind of pulling for the knowledge and you know, take any questions you guys have at this point.
I have a question for you. And this is from the perspective of boots on the ground. Okay. And I know you've been in sales before. What's the benefit of a customer? And this may be a little sensitive area for you, but the benefit of a customer going this route versus just installing a Generac for emergency purposes only, which is much cheaper solution. What is your take on that? Because I get it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great question. And ultimately, I think the best salespeople authentically want their customers to do what's in the best interest for them. So you got to look at the whole picture. And this is where, if we did a follow-up on savings, you know, it would kind of increase the case, right? If you're talking about battery backup compared to Generac backup only, right? How much, you know, what's the winning equation there? If there were no other factors, probably would be a generator. So the other factors that I would say would have people choose batteries instead of a generator as a backup solution, there's a few of them. The first is protection from rate arbitrage or net metering lack of homeowner benefits. So in SDG&E, for example, in my territory, the on-peak costs of electricity at the evening is now 67 cents.
Yep.
The semi-peak cost, I think, are 37 cents. Even if somebody is on the old net metering and grandfathered in, the utilities can still increase that peak cost. And so that, I would assume, is going to be up towards $1 within a few years. As that difference between the cost of on-peak energy and off-peak energy increases, the savings that somebody's getting from the solar energy they're selling back during the daytime decreases as well. So to try to answer your question succinctly, Richard just lost power. There you go. Are your lights on at least?
Wow.
You're still on the internet, right? Is this your phone?
This is my phone, so, and I got a little bit of lights.
You got some lights on. There you go.
Yeah.
Better than being in the dark.
You
It's
lost
still
power,
dirty.
Richard?
Tell them
Huh?
20.
You lost power?
Yeah. So it just lost, and yeah.
So
I guess I'm
I'm gonna do a quick summary for, this is real time. A quick summary for Dana. So here's the deal. I'd say at a high level, you're creating more energy independence with a battery system. You're protecting the solar investment so that you can actually capture the solar energy that you're producing, because a generator will never allow, well, in almost all cases, it will not allow the solar to operate at the same time as a generator. You can't store the solar energy in the generator. You have to use either or. If there's a disruption in gas supply from the generator, then you're out of luck. So it does create more resilience. It's much more of a self-sufficient system. You're not having to drive, if it's a longer outage, you're not having to drive to fill up gasoline at the local place, which might have long lines in an emergency to fill up your generator. Right? So it provides a handful of benefits in terms of long-term financial protection for your solar system to make sure you're getting the most value. It provides more resilience in an outage because you don't have any fuel. Well, your fuel is sunshine, right? And that's worth it to a lot of people, right? And then you take the tax credit that you're getting for the storage, you take the financing that you're already getting for the solar system, you start adding those things up. And you say, you know, do I really want to have kind of an older, you know, technology that's dirty and provides me to fill it up and, you know, provides me to maintain it? Or do I want to have, you know, a fully integrated home energy management system that's got, you know, the latest technology? A lot of people want technology. They don't want something that's antiquated. So we could talk about that more, but I think the major points are protection from on-peak rate increases, protection from changes in the net metering structure locally, securing your solar investment, protection from having to source fuel for your generator, avoiding maintaining a generator, accessing financing through solar that you wouldn't get through a generator, getting a tax credit for the battery that you wouldn't get for a generator. Those would be the key points that I would think would have somebody choose a battery backup system over a generator.
Can I ask
That's
you
good.
a
That's
5-second yes or no question?
Shoot, Doug.
Okay, IQ8 plus, pluses on the roof, they have to have the plus in the battery also? You match the inverters.
Say that again.
Okay, I have on the panels, I have IQ8 pluses. Does the
Great.
battery have to have the IQ8 plus also?
No, the batteries will work with any IQ8, and the batteries have IQ8s inside of them.
Are they the pluses, M's, or 8s? That's what this one.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, okay.
Think about it like this. The pluses, M's, or A's are the compatible inverter for the solar panel.
Correct.
The IQ8s in the battery are compatible to our batteries.
Okay, oh, perfect, okay, that answered it. Thank you, sir.
Great question. Okay, Anthony, I know we're over time. You guys have been great. Hopefully this has been, you know, good for your team. And I really want to have your whole team level up, right? So, you know, Dana calls you, runs something by you, you're helping Dana. Ramsey, you know, can kind of look at this with you. Doug, you know, he's been on a lot of training, so he's getting it, right? Work together as a team to level up your expertise. And feel free to come to my office hours. Happy to do another training in a few weeks if that's of value to you guys. And keep up the great work. Grateful to be able to support you guys and share, you know, my experience and you know what I've worked really hard to understand with you guys.
You're awesome, thank you so
Great
much.
job.
Yeah.
Great
you, guys.
job, Spencer.
Have a great rest of
job.
your day. Have a great
Amazing,
evening.
Spence, amazing.
Yeah.
Spencer, thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Spencer.
it. Great,
Talk to you guys
great
soon.
information.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Keep the lights
Bye.
on there, Richard.
Be safe, Richard.
I'm glad
Thanks,
to see.
guys.
I can see your systems. Let's see. Where's your battery state of charge right now?
Uh-oh,
Let's
take a
see.
look.
putting him on blast.
Okay,
Yeah,
here
it
we
just-
go.
Turn that AC off, Rich. Come on, bud.
Right now. Ooh, battery's going down. I would turn off some lights
Ooh.
here. You only got
Yeah.
a 3. You're at 88 state of charge. You just went through
Ooh.
12%. You may want to go around the house and figure out what loads are not necessary to stay on. Just the essentials at this point.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. So my wife's running around right now turning things off. So
Yeah.
Hey, Spencer, should he go out to the breaker and turn things off, or where does he turn them off at? Or just turn off the switches?
Yeah, it is funny that this is saying it's exporting the grid and the house is running off the thing. That is kind of weird. I would be surprised. That is kind of funny that this is happening right now. So I'm going to actually take a screenshot of this and send this to my team. I don't know if this might just be a data error. Live status closing in 15 minutes. Are you on, there you go. This might be a data error right here, but I'm glad the lights are staying on even with a blackout.
Yes, that's huge.
Cool.
it looks like it might have come back on here just now because it's been flickering before it went off, and then it went off, and then looks like it might. I gotta find out from my wife.
Yeah, it might have come back on because the solar is sending energy back to the grid right now.
Mm.
And it could, it could.
I can tell you, I can tell you the air is off because it's hot in here now. So
Yep. Yeah, I
Spencer,
believe
We
it.
know you like your AC, Rich. We know you do.
Spence, quick question before you go, if you have a chance.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
I put IQ8 pluses on my roof with the
It
REC.
says it's on grid again right now.
Yeah. Yeah, she just told me it's back on, so
Okay. Cool.
hopefully it stays.
Keep going.
So I was saying I put IQ8 pluses on my roof with REC 400s.
Yep.
How big of a boo-boo was that?
Nominal. I would come to next week's, well, not next week's, come to the training on the 11th of October, and I'm going to talk about microinverter clipping.
Okay, cool. And these are on the Facebook page, right? All the videos you're
Yep,
recording.
they're on the Facebook page, and they're going to go up on the resource page too.
Dude, you're the man, dude.
Yeah, he is.
Thank you.
Well,
This
just
is
to
awesome.
clarify his question, so he said he installed REC 400s and IQ8s. And you're concerned about that?
IQ8 pluses.
The pluses.
Because I
versus
saw
M versus
Mike
A.
Patterson talking about at any one point only, what is it, 293 kilowatts can be processed with the pluses.
Yeah,
true?
we're gonna nominal impact.
Okay, perfect. I feel better.
Maybe nominal is like 2%, maybe.
Okay, cool.
But come here, come to the microinverter clipping if you want to understand that more.
Absolutely. 100% appreciate you and everything you do, brother.
Thank you guys. Have a great evening. Keep the lights on.
partner.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Alrighty,
You've been
guys.
awesome.
Talk to you guys
I've
soon.
learned so much.